Minnesota should be the last place that criminals want to do any type of criminal activity whatsoever. That is not the case. Fraud has gone on for too long. It has exploded under Governor Walz. And yet now, because of the help from the federal government, as you're seeing, the ones that are actually prosecuting the fraud and really shining a light on it, that's why we're seeing national attention and getting this changed here in the state. But clearly, there is a large number of employees that have come out on X and said that they've tried to make changes or report things and they were retaliated against. That is not right in any job, let alone in the state government. That itself needs to be investigated further. In this last legislative session, though, we did add whistleblower protections to kind of expand what was already happening to help uncover the fraud and end it.
Welcome to another brand new episode of the Michele Tafoya podcast. Quick thing. Do you see that little subscribe button wherever you're listening or watching? Just click it, please. That helps us grow, and we want to be a podcast that you enjoy 3 times a week, every single week. So just hit subscribe. We really appreciate it. I've been interviewing all of the Republican gubernatorial candidates in Minnesota. It's clear by the breadth and depth of this group of people, I think we're up to 9 or 10 now, that want to run for governor against Tim Walz. They see a path. They see an administration under Tim Walz that has not served Minnesota well, and they want to be the ones to break through and finally get a Republican back in the governor's mansion. Will it happen? We're going to find out. But I've been talking to all of them. Today, Speaker Lisa Demuth, she is Speaker of the House in Minnesota. She's already picked a running mate, and she's joining us to talk about her vision for the state of Minnesota. And a lot of people may have seen her on national television. She's been interviewed about the fraud in Minnesota, and there's a lot of mispronunciation about her last name. The first time I met her, she said, "Michele, it rhymes. It sounds like Joe Namath." Lisa Demuth. So Lisa Demuth, the Speaker of the House, is our guest next. Speaker Demuth, thank you for taking the time to join me. This is a crowded field, and it seems to be getting more crowded by the day or by the week. Why do you think so many Republicans want to jump in for governor?
Well, thanks for having me on your podcast, Michele. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. I think you're seeing a crowded Republican field because of what we've seen under too long of Democrat control here in the state of Minnesota, specifically under Tim Walz and his 7 years as governor of this state, where we've watched our state budget explode. We've watched an $18 billion surplus be spent. All of our taxes and fees have been raised. Only half of our kids can read at grade level. And of course, as you and most people have heard, we have record fraud here in the state of Minnesota. This is a wonderful opportunity in 2026 for Republicans to take over and get the state back on track. That's why you're seeing a crowded field. Clearly, it's going to narrow as time goes on, but it is time for Republicans, conservatives, and all Minnesotans to pull together and change the direction of our state.
Independents are always really crucial in Minnesota as well. There's a good chunk of independents who probably aren't decided right now. What's your message to them? I have often told you about my friends at besthotgrill.com. They are doing something they rarely do, which is to hold a sale on their Solaire infrared grills. From November 24th through December 5th, they're offering a 25% discount off their Solaire Anywhere and Solaire Everywhere portable infrared grills. These, I got to tell you, are the perfect gift for a college student, a tailgater, someone who loves to boat, an RVer, a picnicker, or just a foodie, or for you. Don't you deserve the best under the tree this season? Also through December 5th, when you purchase a 27-inch or larger Solaire infrared grill, you will receive for free a stainless steel griddle and a quality USA-made cover to protect your investment. That's up to a $650 value. Now imagine not only grilling juicy and tasty food, but also making eggs, pancakes, smash burger, fajitas, pizza, anything you would like on your free professional style griddle. Go to besthotgrill.com to learn more about USA-made Solaire infrared grills and their Black Friday Cyber Monday sale. That's besthotgrill.com. Buy Solaire infrared grills on sale through December 5th at besthotgrill.com. Independents are always really crucial in Minnesota as well. There's a good chunk of independents who probably aren't decided right now. What's your message to them?
My message to independents, Republicans, and Democrats is that I am the best candidate to lead Minnesota going forward. I have a proven track record of being able to work as my responsibility has shown in order to get our state budget done, as I've served as Speaker of the House. I have had the responsibility of negotiating directly with Governor Walz, and I have a proven track record that I have delivered a $5 billion reduction in state spending. I ended the taxpayer-funded illegal immigrant health care, and then we protected our non-public schools from major cuts. We added in fraud protection by adding FTEs to the OLA. Those were the things that I did as Speaker of the House with a tied House. I am the best one to lead us forward.
FTE with the OLA. Translate that for our lay people watching.
Absolutely. So an FTE is a full-time equivalent employee. The OLA is a nonpartisan Office of Legislative Auditor. What the OLA does is they have looked into agencies and programs within the state. And again, nonpartisan, so not Democrat, not Republican, but looking at the functioning of those programs. They produce reports, and they have been showing through many agencies, in DHS specifically, but in all different agencies, Department of Revenue, Department of Education, where we have seen the most fraud. We've also seen that a number of those agencies have a lack of internal control. So when I talk about an FTE or two additional full-time equivalent employees added to the Office of Legislative Auditor, clearly I have put a focus on wanting to make sure that our tax dollars are protected here in Minnesota, because we've seen over $1 billion go out in fraud.
The fraud story is massive. It's all over the place. Tim Walz is deciding to blame others for it, but why does the buck stop with the governor?
It absolutely stops with the governor. He is, when you think of it as a business, the governor of the state is the CEO of the state. He chooses commissioners and puts them into office to run all of the different departments. But when there has been numerous allegations of fraud under Governor Walz, there's been over 25 scandals of fraud just in 7 years. His responsibility is to make sure that tax dollars are protected, that services are deployed to those that need it the most, and to oversee everything. Not a single employee has lost their job during this time, Michelle.
Yeah.
It absolutely is the governor's responsibility for the well-working of our state.
Well, he says he doesn't take responsibility for anything except putting people in jail. But I would note that the people who have been put in jail have been done so because of federal prosecutions, not because of Tim Walz. So how do you answer him on that point beyond what I just pointed out?
You're right. He hasn't put anyone in jail. He has also said in that same interview over the weekend, he said that Minnesota is a prosperous state, a well-run state, a generous state, but that's what would attract criminals. Michelle, let's think about that a little bit. If things are well run, Minnesota should be the last place that criminals want to do any type of criminal activity whatsoever. That is not the case. Fraud has gone on for too long. It has exploded under Governor Walz. And yet now, because of the help from the federal government, as you're seeing, the ones that are actually prosecuting the fraud and really shining a light on it, that's why we're seeing national attention and getting this changed here in the state.
Well, we know that the City Journal, which is part of the Manhattan Institute, wrote, deeply on this topic, and then the New York Times picked it up, and somehow now the New York Times has given the media this permission structure to now say, oh, look at Minnesota. I mean, it's been years that this has been going on. People have been calling it out. There have been whistleblowers. What do you know about the whistleblowers and why they weren't listened to?
I'm not sure why they weren't listened to, but clearly there is a large number of employees that have come out on X and said that they've tried to make changes or report things and they were retaliated against. That is not right in any job, let alone in the state government. That itself needs to be investigated further. In this last legislative session, though, we did add whistleblower protections to kind of expand what was already happening to help uncover the fraud and end it.
One of the things about this fraud is it's been massively disproportionately committed by the Somali community. Now, you can say, well, there are 80,000 Somalis in the state of Minnesota and maybe 100 were involved in this. But it's been, we can agree, disproportionate. And we know that Tim Walz at least looks at, and I think our Attorney General, Keith Ellison, looks at this group as a significant voting bloc, and that threatened to say, hey, if you don't support our businesses here that want to do these things, which were fraudulent, we're just going to call you racist. They succumbed to that. They gave in to that. How do we deal with this in a way that, and when I say we, I mean the state of Minnesota where I live, how do we deal with this in a way that does not attack necessarily an entire community, but points out very clearly that it is prevalent within this community?
I think you are exactly right. When you think of any community, any population, there are not just completely bad people in any certain community or completely good people. But I think the problem that we're facing here in Minnesota is when someone claims that's racist, don't talk about it, we're actually ignoring the actual fraud that's going on. We
Right.
have to keep our eye on the fraud itself and how to end it rather than worried that it's going to be mistaken as racism and then not do anything about it. That is absolutely wrong. In no way would I demonize an entire community, but you're right, Michelle. It is disproportionately out of 78 defendants and prosecutions, over 70 have been from the Somali community. We have to look at that differently. But we also have a local news channel and a local paper that have quotes from Somali Americans saying, investigate this. We need this to stop in our community too.
I have seen those quotes and thank goodness for them. I applaud anyone who steps up and says, let's look at where the fraud is. Additionally, I know that you are looking at, and I think a lot of Minnesotans are concerned about the judges in our system, in our legal system in Minnesota. Mary Moriarty comes to mind, but there have been a number of cases where people have been released back. And we're seeing this really nationwide. People with long rap sheets released back onto the street for whatever ideological reason. What are you seeing, and what can a governor do about it? A governor, Lisa Demuth, what would she do about it?
So a governor is the one that appoints judges to our district courts and the Supreme Court. And we have had nearly a generation of Democrat appointed judges here in Minnesota. We've had a couple of recent cases that are most concerning. On the issue of fraud, there was someone that was found guilty by a jury. So you think of regular Minnesotans doing their job, their civic duty as serving on a jury. They unanimously found this person guilty of $7.2 million in fraud. Not talking about just a few hundred, which is bad, but $7.2 million of fraud. And a district judge overturned that jury ruling.
So it was a unanimous jury that ruled that this person was guilty.
Yes.
And one district judge was able to overturn that. That seems strange to me. What's going on there?
I don't know. All I know is when there are Democrat appointed judges that are willing to do something like that, we clearly have judges, not every judge, but there is a pattern in our state that there is a priority of the criminals over victims. Whether it is fraud or any other type of victim, there is a prioritization. A governor is responsible for appointing the judges. As governor, I will make sure, and Michelle, I should say this too, I have already chosen my running mate. At this point, I am the only one in the governor's race that has named my running mate, and that is Ryan Wilson. You might remember his name. He ran for state auditor back in 2022 and came very, very close. He was the closest race in our statewide races. The reason I chose Ryan, though, he is also an attorney and has a proven record in constitutional law and the work that he has done. Our ticket is ready to lead Minnesota all the way through with creating policies, but he will be very, very much involved in making sure that we have committees that are going to select the correct judges to serve our entire state, to ensure that victims are prioritized rather than criminals, and make sure that the law is upheld all the way through the process.
Speaking of the law being upheld, and I've asked other candidates about this, there was, of course, in 2020, the big defund the police movement. There's been a real drop in morale. I know I've spoken to law enforcement. I've spoken to a lot of Minnesota peacekeepers who just look downtrodden. They look disheartened. They feel that they don't have the backing of the mayor of Minneapolis or the governor of Minnesota. How do you approach that? And if Hennepin County or counties or cities don't want to go along with you, what do you do?
I have always supported law enforcement, and I will continue to do so. When we are talking about safety across our state, we need qualified, excellent law enforcement agents that are able to do their jobs and be respected in those jobs. We need to have people that are deciding on their careers. We need to have them consider being in law enforcement and public safety. We're counting on that. Michele, going back to the piece with the judges, how frustrating for someone in law enforcement to do their job, arrest a criminal, and then watch them be spun out early or to really negate the work that they're doing. That doesn't help our communities. It doesn't help the job that they're doing. I will always support law enforcement. I have and will continue to do that. But when you think of how a state budget works, especially in our cities of the first class, so our large cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Duluth, Rochester, there is a requirement that an adequate number of law enforcement members will be in that community. And that's what part of that local government aid is for. So LGA funding that comes from our taxes goes out to communities. Part of that is ensuring public safety. And I had a bill that I was introducing back in February of 2020. So go all the way back in your mind before the world shut down.
Yeah.
We knew that the Minneapolis Police Department at that time was short over 200 officers. My bill at the time, which didn't get a hearing and it didn't get passed, but it said that we would withhold a portion of your LGA or local government aid if you did not bring your complement of officers up to what was going to be required by law. That didn't get any traction. That was before we saw all of the defunding of police movement. That's how much I supported both our law enforcement, but also the communities and the safety. I will continue to work that way as governor of Minnesota.
I want to get back to a couple of sort of hot topics here. One being that the President of the United States has come out very strongly against the Somali community. I hear frustration out of the White House, out of DC. I hear, but there, some of the language is tough. Where do you stand with him and where do you diverge?
I think the language is tough and I recognize that. But I look back at it this way, Michele. If Governor Walz had been taking fraud seriously and ending fraud in the state of Minnesota, even while Biden was president, if we needed help from the White House while Biden was in office, we wouldn't be having these same conversations. Fraud in Minnesota would be over. The fact that it has gone unchecked for over 7 years is bringing frustration at every single level. This squarely is on Governor Walz's shoulders for not handling our state budget and the issue of fraud in a proper manner over his time as governor.
What about the lieutenant governor? What should she have known, and could she have done anything? Or is that just you have a ticket. You are obviously have decided on who you want to be your lieutenant governor. Does Peggy Flanagan have any guilt here? Is any of this on her?
Well, the Walz Flanagan administration should have been handling this from the very beginning, and they haven't, because this is where we find ourselves. That is why it was very important to me to choose a running mate that was going to be excellently qualified for lieutenant governor, that we could lead the state together early on, both through the campaign so people got to know us, but then also as we go forward into actually being elected and then serving in that administration. It has to be a partnership and a priority. That's why you have a governor and lieutenant governor, to work together for the betterment of all Minnesota. We haven't necessarily seen that over this current administration.
I would agree with that. And, you know, as much as people want to talk about the A word, affordability, and the economy, which are exceedingly important and all part of a big picture in my mind, to me, it starts with public safety. If you can't feel safe in your neighborhoods, in your schools, in your churches, in your business offices, on the streets, how can we possibly have a thriving economy where people want to go out and spend money and shop and go to restaurants? That to me seems to be the number one. If you started any community anywhere on the planet with 10 people, with 200 people, it seems to me that their first concern would be, let's keep each other safe.
Exactly. And that's what we need here in Minnesota. I remember, I grew up I was born in Paynesville, and then we moved to the metro when I was 7, and we lived right off the lake in Chicago for a number of years. But also being from Bloomington, as a teenager, I was allowed to go downtown. I could take the bus. It felt safe. I don't even feel comfortable doing something like that right now as an adult, necessarily, because of what we've seen. The work from home and the extension of that has really made our largest cities less populated on the regular. So when you have less people, there is a feeling of less safety. I was speaking earlier today with a group of building owners, and they were talking about these exact things. We want people to come back to work in a way that works best for the jobs that they have and the businesses, but we need our communities to be safe. We need our restaurants to be open. And that really goes across the state. It's different in every little corner, but that really goes across the state, that if we want a thriving economy, businesses need to be able to grow, expand, and stay here in Minnesota. And we know that that also includes safety. It also includes really great schools for families that are looking for great schools and great communities. It's a bigger picture, and that's the part that we've been missing. We can't silo all of these things. We have to look at big picture overall.
All right, what I've been asking each candidate that I've had on, and I don't want to say interviewed because I like to feel like this is just a conversation, but before we let you go, Lisa Demuth, rhymes with Namath, give us your 30-second elevator pitch for you as the next governor of the state of Minnesota.
Thank you for having me on today, Michelle. I believe that Minnesota can be stronger and better than where we find ourselves right now, both for today and for tomorrow, for generations to come. I believe that our kids deserve an excellent education. I believe that our businesses should thrive and not be burdened by high taxes and over-regulation. I believe that families should be able to afford their lives, and Minnesota can be an excellent place. Again, I'm Lisa Demuth. I am running for governor to build a stronger and better Minnesota together, all of us together.
Lisa, thank you so much for taking the time. We really appreciate that. And I end every podcast by saying, be brave and do good. I think running for office is one of the most courageous things a person can do. And certainly, I think almost everyone I've interviewed is doing it so that they can do good. So I appreciate you, and we'll see you down the road.
Excellent. Thank you, Michelle.
You can keep up with the Trump administration when you subscribe to the Trump Report. It's an email that brings you daily highlights from the Oval Office right to your inbox 5 days a week. Subscribe today at SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Trump.